All right, let's talk about something we all struggle with. You know that huge gap between knowing what the wise thing to do is and then actually doing it, especially when things get tough? Well, today we're going to explore that. And our guide for this whole thing, it's just a single high-stakes poker hand. Believe me, it tells a profound story about life, about what strength really is, and, having the guts to change your mind. So let's see how this all plays out.
So, what's the difference between knowing the path and actually walking the path? I mean, this is such a powerful question, right? Because knowing the path, that's the easy bit. You can read all the philosophy books, scroll through all the self-help articles, and just nod your head. Yep, that makes sense. But to actually walk that path, whoa, that's a whole different ballgame.
And this slide, it just nails the difference, doesn't it? On one side, you've got knowing. It's all in your head, it's comfortable. It's like reading about Stoicism on a nice, calm Sunday morning. But then you've got living. And that means actually using that philosophy when someone cuts you off in traffic, or when you get some bad news, or when your ego is totally on the line. Yeah, that's where the real work actually starts.
And that's really what we're talking about here. Live philosophy. Look, it's the messy, difficult, and, let's be honest, often super inconvenient practice of turning ideas into action. It's about choosing the hard right thing over the easy wrong thing, even when nobody's looking. See, true wisdom isn't about collecting facts in your head. It's about letting what you know actually change who you are.
Okay, so to really get a handle on this struggle, let's look at an extreme example. What happens when someone is, almost too aware of reality? When their mind just sees way too much, maybe for its own good.
I mean, think about that highly observant person, maybe the empath type. You know who I'm talking about. The person who walks into a room and just feels it all. All the subtle tensions, the unspoken stuff, the little white lies everyone else just ignores. They see right through the corporate buzzwords in the social games. They just see the facts, even when those facts are really, really uncomfortable for everyone else.
For them, this whole experience can feel like being a Formula One car. But you're stuck in rush hour traffic. You've got all this incredible power, this speed, this potential, just waiting to be unleashed. But you're totally boxed in by an environment that just can't keep up. It is an absolute recipe for frustration.
Or, how about this one? A glorious falcon stuck in a cage that's way too small for it to even fly. You can see your own potential, you know what's possible, but you're just stuck, penned in by social rules, and honestly, by everyone else just wanting to be comfortable.
And what happens? Well, this intense awareness, it often leads to feeling isolated. Because, let's face it, pointing out that the emperor has no clothes is not a great way to make friends. Speaking the truth creates friction. So a lot of people who see the world this clearly just learn to keep their mouths shut, because every interaction starts to feel like a compromise. So where on earth can a person like this actually thrive? We need a place where wishful thinking gets you nowhere. A place where a cold, hard, honest look at the truth is the only thing that matters. And for that, we're heading to the poker table.
Because the poker table, it's the perfect lab for this stuff. It's where theory goes to die and reality takes over. There is absolutely nowhere to hide. You can't just wish you had a better hand. You can't pretend the situation is something it's not. The game will brutally, absolutely punish you for lying to yourself, and it only rewards one thing: a clear-eyed, honest assessment of reality.
Okay, so let's really see how this works in a single hand of poker. We're going to break it down, card by card, and watch a pretty powerful philosophical lesson unfold right in front of us.
Okay, so picture this. You look down at your cards, and you've got an ace and a queen. Now, before any other cards are out there, man, this feels good. This is a premium hand. It's packed with potential. You're feeling strong, you're feeling confident, and you're ready to get involved in a big way. Yeah, in a vacuum, on a scale of 1 to 5, this is a solid 4. I mean, it's not the absolute best hand possible, but it's right up there in the top tier. Based on the information you have right now, you've got every reason in the world to think you're sitting pretty. But then, the flop comes. The first 3 community cards hit the table, and this moment is everything. Suddenly, there's this huge flood of new information, and everybody sees it at the same time. The entire context of the game has just completely, and I mean irrevocably, changed. And that new information, it forces what you could call a great re-ranking. Just a second ago, before the flop, your ace-queen was a monster, near the top of the food chain. But now with these new cards out there, your hand, which didn't get any better, has just plummeted in value. The very thing that felt so strong is now one of the weakest hands possible in this new reality.
So that strength rating, it's crashed from a solid 4 all the way down to a 1. Now think about that. Your hand didn't change. The cards in your hand are the same, but its value completely changed. That beautiful hand you were so excited about is now super, super vulnerable. And that's the key. Its strength was never absolute. It was always 100% dependent on the situation.
And this brings us right to the heart of the matter, the idea of relative strength. The value of your hand, or, your job, your opinion, your 5-year plan, it's never a fixed thing. It's determined completely by the context you're in. And when new information comes along, it has to force you to reevaluate. It just has to.
Okay, so how do we take this lesson away from the poker table and into our actual lives? Because let's be real, life is constantly dealing us a flop, a whole new set of circumstances that just changes the entire game.
Look, real wisdom isn't about being dealt ace-queen in life. It's not about getting that perfect job right after graduation or having some flawless plan all mapped out. That's just your starting hand. Yeah, it feels great at the time, but trust me, it is not the whole story.
The real skill, the thing that actually matters, is what you do when life deals you that flop. When your entire industry gets disrupted, or a relationship you counted on ends, or some crazy global event just throws all your plans out the window. The big question is this: can you honestly, truly look at your new position without being stuck on how strong and confident you felt just a moment ago? So how do we actually do this? Well, it kind of breaks down in 4 steps. First, you just have to acknowledge the new information. No denial, just accept the facts. Second, reevaluate where you are with brutal honesty. Where do I really stand right now? Third, and this one is the killer, you have to detach from how great your old position felt. Let go of that ego. And finally, number 4, adjust your strategy. You just can't keep playing the game the same way you were before.
So I'm going to leave you with this question to think about. What flop has life just dealt you? What new piece of information just changed the whole game for your career or your relationships or maybe even your beliefs? And here's the most important part. Are you willing to fold a hand that only felt strong so that you can play the hand that you actually have right now?
Okay, let's unpack this. We are diving into a stack of sources today that, well, it really defies categorization.
It's a wild mix.
It is. We've somehow managed to take ancient Stoic philosophy, blend it with some really deep personal and social introspection, and then throw in the highly specific tactical mac of advanced poker strategy. It's a synthesis that is, it's brilliant and frankly, a little bizarre.
Well, what's so fascinating here is that all those things that seem so different, personal philosophy on one hand, high stakes gambling on the other, they're all tied together
The what?
by a single really powerful challenge: the need for constant self-assessment and just radical honesty.
Okay.
The core message is completely universal. It's the struggle for authenticity and the necessity of constant recalibration. It doesn't matter if you're looking at a corrupt social system or the value of your hand at a card table.
Right.
You have to be willing to see things as they truly are, not how you wish they were.
Exactly. And that's our mission in this deep dive. We want to explore that nature of truth, the profound challenge of living authentically, against the grain.
Yeah.
And that critical skill of constant recalibration. We're pulling from a really high-level dialogue that references a huge body of work from one of the speakers. We're talking titles like La Samurai Stoic, The Way of the Stoic Diamond.
Stoic samurai.
Right? So we're not just reading ancient history here. We're looking at a modern philosophy that was forged in the arena of real life and, well, high-stakes strategy.
It's the ultimate proving ground for theory versus application, isn't it? The sources just force you to confront that integrity gap.
Yeah, and the stakes are huge.
They range from achieving genuine inner peace on one end to minimizing just devastating financial losses on the other.
So let's start with that philosophical foundation. The thing that really underpins this entire deep dive, it's this crucial distinction between, let's say, wisdom and just mere knowledge. This separation is the engine driving the whole conversation.
It is.
Knowledge, as it's defined here, is just the factual data you get, what you learn in school, what you read in a book. But philosophy, that's something else entirely.
Philosophy is living it.
Right.
And that's such a critical line to draw, because knowledge by itself, if it's not applied to your behavior, is just, it's inert, it's useless.
Just trivia.
Exactly. And the sources give the perfect example. We all know that excessive consumption, smoking, drinking, overeating, we know it's bad for our health.
Of course.
That knowledge is scientifically proven, it's widely taught, it's everywhere. But the philosophical part, the wisdom, that's the difficult, sometimes agonizing ability to turn that understanding into real sustained action, into a habit. That's where you overcome your own frailty.
It's that gap, right?
Yeah.
The chasm between just understanding something in your head and actually doing it.
Yeah,
The Greeks had a word for it, akrasia. It's that state of acting against your own better judgment.
that's it.
So knowing smoking is dangerous, that's level one. That's just intellectual knowledge.
Yeah.
But developing the willpower, changing your environment, putting a system in place to actually quit for good, that is a philosophical act.
You have to choose a different way of being.
And that choice demands integrity.
And this is where the sources launched this really pointed critique, this idea of the little wise men.
I love that phrase.
It's great, isn't it? These are the individuals who claim they're part of some philosophical school, Stoicism, Buddhism, whatever, but then they do this act of philosophical cherry picking.
Right, they take what they like.
They selectively reject the parts they find difficult or unpopular or just personally inconvenient, and it's usually to protect their lifestyle, their wealth, their comfort.
And the critique gets really sharp here. It uses Buddhism as the prime example. The core teaching, according to the sources, it often pushes for this radical simplicity. For poverty, even.
A truly dedicated Buddhist, in that view, should be an ascetic, aiming to be, and this is a quote, slim, poor, close to starving to death. It's not just a lifestyle choice. It's a foundational physical rejection of material attachment, of worldly desire.
And that's where the problem comes in with modern practitioners.
Precisely. The challenge is that a lot of them, in an effort to make the philosophy more palatable or popular in our consumerist world, they just dismiss those hard teachings.
They just ignore them.
They rationalize it. They say you can have significant wealth, you can indulge in all sorts of enjoyment, and still claim to be fully following the philosophy. But the sources argue that it completely neuters the teaching.
Of course it does.
If you reject the difficult demand, the very part that's designed to test your detachment, you're rejecting the entire substance of the philosophy.
It creates this massive, glaring integrity gap. And the honest approach, as the speaker defines it, isn't necessarily following it perfectly.
No, because we're human, we're flawed.
Right. It's about acknowledging that the difficult teachings exist, explaining their purpose, and then just being honest about your own shortcomings. You keep your integrity by saying, look, this teaching demands radical poverty. I'm trying, but right now I'm only at 50% and I'm striving to improve.
That admission of personal struggle and sincerity, that is the ethical and philosophical high ground.
Yeah.
When you bypass that struggle and instead you just dismiss the hard parts as nonsense or cultural relics that don't apply anymore, you're not practicing philosophy.
You're just rationalizing.
Exactly. You've just adopted the easy, comfortable parts that already fit with how you were living anyway. It makes the philosophy completely meaningless.
That's such a crucial point. I mean, if philosophy only tells you to enjoy life and get rich, why do you even need it? That's what advertising already tells you.
Right.
Philosophy is supposed to be this rigorous, challenging path that's different from the default settings of society. It should demand effort and self-control and sacrifice.
And the problem with the little wise men isn't their failure to be perfect. Nobody's perfect. It's their intellectual dishonesty in rejecting the principle itself.
They want the title.
They want the title of wise man without any of the discipline required to earn it.
And I think the analogy they use to connect this back to you, the listener, is just brilliant. It's the half homework analogy.
Yeah, that's a good one.
If you're struggling with a huge assignment, okay, starting small and doing half of it is definitely better than doing nothing. We can all agree on that.
Incremental progress, right?
But the problem, the real problem, comes when you do that half and then you stand up and you loudly declare that the other half of the assignment is just crap.
That it's irrelevant or poorly designed.
Exactly. That it shouldn't even exist in the curriculum.
Doing half the work, that's the struggle of improvement. That's commendable. But claiming the other half is flawed or irrelevant, that's just intellectual arrogance. It betrays the whole principle.
It's a shift, right? From an honest personal struggle to this public, self-serving rationalization. It's designed to make your own shortcomings look like virtues.
And if you start teaching other people that only the easy parts matter, you corrupt the entire system.
And that integrity gap, that failure to face reality honestly, whether it's the demands of a philosophy or just the state of your own behavior, it sets the stage for the next big theme.
It does. It explains why certain people find social reality, well, almost unbearable. When you hold that high standard for yourself, You can't help but notice the pervasive lack of it in everyone else.
And that's where the friction starts, which moves us right into section 2, where the conversation really zeroes in on the experience of the highly sensitive person. Specifically, this archetype they call the empath.
And this concept, they say, it comes from a psychological framework or study called Kalung. It's a way to understand this intense psychological sensitivity.
And for this person, the sources make this incredibly blunt observation. Everybody else is hell.
It's a dramatic statement, for sure.
It is.
But it perfectly captures the burden of having this acute, unrelenting observation. The empath here isn't described as someone who just feels emotions deeply. It's someone who has a clarity that is so stark, they see through all the foundational lies.
The polite fictions.
The polite fictions, the deep-seated shortcomings of people and systems all around them, they see the reality that everyone else is working so hard to ignore.
And that clarity is just, it's intensely disruptive. I mean, think about a typical office or a social group when everyone is admiring the director, celebrating their leadership.
The empath is the one pointing out the director's strategic flaws or, their moral failing.
Right. Or when a business celebrates a huge success, the empath is the one who highlights the facts that suck. The environmental costs, the unfair labor practices, the unsustainable debt.
And the sources claim this observation, that the empath is often right, was tested and found accurate 97% of the time. Now, we have to be a little critical of that specific number. It probably represents the speaker's own experience within their field, Kalung or strategic analysis. But the principle is what matters, that this acute vision is dangerous to the status quo.
That's the friction. If we accept the premise that the empath sees reality with superior clarity, then the natural consequence has to be social rejection.
Nobody wants their comfortable consensus challenged.
Exactly. That clarity is inherently disruptive to social harmony, which, let's be honest, often depends on everyone agreeing to certain fictions or just being polite.
And the rejection becomes progressive. The more time that passes, the more people, even family, siblings, dislike the empath.
Why?
Because they're holding up this uncomfortably honest mirror to the group's failings. And that rejection, it generates suffering. It leads to more and more isolation until eventually that person seeks solitude.
So it stops being a choice.
It becomes a survival mechanism to protect their sanity and their integrity.
And the suffering is made worse by the students' incredibly detailed personal critique of the people they have to deal with. It's not just big philosophical flaws, it's the constant irritating micro details.
The list is amazing. Specific mannerisms, how people talk, how they eat, their predictable culture, their opinions.
And just the overall profound boredom of their conversation.
That list of micro annoyances really highlights something that gets missed in discussions about solitude. It's not just about grand social injustice. It's about the constant low-level sensory and intellectual drain of being around mediocrity.
It points right to the conformity trap.
Exactly. We're wired to gravitate towards similarity for safety, for social reasons. But what happens is people often end up lacking a unique, developed personality. They just echo what's popular or what's been fed to them by the media.
And for the sensitive observer, the cost of being around that conformity is its self-dissolution. One speaker says that if they spend too much time with these people, they start to feel programmed to be like that.
They start to lose something essential about themselves.
So that loss mandates distance. Solitude becomes this necessary retreat for self-reflection, for rediscovering who you are without all those borrowed opinions.
And this is where we have to connect it back to the integrity discussion from section 1 through a Stoic lens.
Okay.
The empath's suffering, you could argue, comes from judging externals, other people's flaws, which are outside of your control. So while the impulse for solitude is valid, the deeper philosophical fix should be to practice detachment.
To control your internal reaction.
Precisely. Solitude becomes the training ground to build that internal fortress.
And the sources use two incredible analogies to describe this feeling of being trapped. The first one is feeling like a high-performance Formula One car. Stuck driving 50 kilometers an hour in city traffic. You're forced to follow these low speed limits. You can't use your real power. You can't show your true potential.
And the second one, which I think is even more poignant, it speaks to the spirit.
Yeah.
It's the image of a majestic falcon, built for soaring, but it's trapped in a tiny cage. It flaps its wings, it goes through the motions of flight, but it can never actually fly. And that cage of social mediocrity, it just generates disappointment and intense annoyance.
The conclusion they draw from this is that solitude becomes the crucible for real thought. your best ideas, your deepest insights.
It's the light bulb moments.
Yeah, they consistently happen when you're alone, debating a problem with yourself or just analyzing something complex. They rarely, if ever, happen when you're wasting time consuming what the sources call wholly weird movies,
Which is a great term for distracting low-value content.
or engaging in just depthless social interactions.
But, and this is a critical clarification, they say solitude, while necessary, is not the ultimate ideal.
What's better?
What would be vastly better is finding true intellectual peers, people you can have genuinely interesting high-level discussions with, the modern version of Plato talking to Socrates. The problem is just how rare that is.
This preference for small, high-quality interactions then leads to a discussion on our innate wiring, microsocial structures.
Yeah, we are biologically wired to live in small, intimate groups. You hear about the Dunbar number, maybe 30 to 150 people at most.
Right.
When you go beyond that, especially the lower number, it just naturally creates anxiety.
Then why is that?
It's just necessity. When you meet strangers outside your group, you have to be defensive. You instinctively see them as potential threats, like monkeys defending their territory from another tribe.
And modern city life just forces us into constant contact with strangers. It keeps that baseline stress level high.
And that anxiety shows up in fascinating ways, like the host's strong aversion to shaking hands because of hygiene.
It's a very specific, practical boundary, right?
Yeah.
Rooted in this fundamental distrust of the external environment.
And it wasn't just a theory. It was validated by a bad experience. The host made an exception, shook the hand of a piano teacher who had a huge cold,
And promptly got sick.
which just reinforces the initial instinct. Protecting your internal state sometimes means really rigid control over your external interactions.
The conversation then shifts to linguistic boundaries, managing formal and informal address. English is simple. We just have you.
But other languages have formal pronouns to create distance or show respect. One speaker talks about wanting to use the formal pronoun with that same piano teacher because she's not in their intimacy circle.
It's a way of defining your social orbit.
Exactly. The formality is a linguistic boundary. It signals respect without requiring closeness. And this is connected to the Portuguese custom among the upper class, who historically use the formal pronoun even with their own family, their own children.
As a marker of respect.
It's a structure of deference, which one speaker finds logically very appealing.
And then we get the ultimate practical example of this, prioritizing your own peace over social obligation. The decision to skip a Christmas invitation.
And the reason given is that the household Marion and her husband George is described as extremely dysfunctional.
That is the empath's solitude in action.
It's a cold, clear risk-benefit analysis. Why would you subject yourself to George's bad humor, which is connected to the dynamics in movies like Buffalo 66?
Which is all about profound family dysfunction and bitterness.
Right. Why endure that chaotic, emotionally draining environment when solitude is peaceful and productive? The choice is clear. You prioritize your integrity and peace, even if it means rejecting a social ritual like a Christmas gathering.
So if the social environment isn't offering insight or stimulation, the conclusion is it's just actively draining you. Solitude is the logical, stoic choice.
And that rigorous assessment of reality brings us back to the historical frameworks people have used to understand power and truth, which gets us into the very thorny territory of philosophy versus religion.
The conversation takes a very sharp, very analytical turn here. It focuses on the fundamental difference between philosophical living and religious belief.
And it centers on what the sources call the supernatural hurdle.
The core argument is highly rational. Philosophy should teach you how to live well, how to endure, how to execute strategy, even if you can't perform miracles.
The problem starts the moment you introduce the supernatural. That's the departure point. When you rely on miracles or some external divine intervention, you stop being a strategist.
You're not focused on human agency or logic anymore.
No. You're reduced to just a believer waiting for salvation or magic. And that fundamentally externalizes your power and removes your own responsibility for self-mastery.
To make this point, the sources dive into the historical debate around Jesus and the question of magic, particularly the arguments from critics in the Middle Ages.
And the argument was fascinatingly specific. The critics weren't debating if something extraordinary happened. They were debating the source of the power.
That's right. They argued Jesus was just a magician who had learned common tricks in Egypt.
So these acts, the healing, the conjuring, they were accepted as real phenomena. The origin was the battleground. The actual debate back then wasn't about whether healing the blind happened. That was pretty much accepted as a fact within their culture.
The question was theological and political.
Right. Did the power come from God, or did it come from the devil? Or just earthly magic?
And the distinction, the sources argue, was completely arbitrary and subjective. It was really just about enforcing power structures.
There was no clear, verifiable, objective test that could separate a divine miracle from a devilish magic trick. The judgment was purely political or emotional.
If you liked the person and their message, the power was God-given.
And if you disliked them or they challenged the existing order, they were a magician who should be prosecuted or even burned alive.
This historical analysis just reveals a complete intellectual vacuum where rational inquiry should have been.
They were so hyper-focused on the origin of the power divine or infernal that they completely ignored the possibility that the event could have been achieved through natural means.
Right. Superior knowledge, a learned medical remedy, simple psychological suggestion that they just didn't understand yet.
Rationality was just excluded from the equation.
And that historical context sets up the perfect modern challenge to that old mindset. Analyzing that specific famous act where Jesus reportedly put chewed earth mixed with saliva on a blind person's eyes.
And one speaker immediately jumps on the most obvious rational point.
Which is,
That's inherently unhygienic. Based on modern medicine, that should absolutely make the condition worse. It could introduce an infection, not heal the patient.
and the student, who represents the modern rational mind, then launches into this brilliant attempt to rationalize the healing.
They're trying to find the learned skill, the remedy, the logic behind the trick.
And the examples are compelling. They cite how we now know that just resting a severe injury can actually cause muscle atrophy and bone deformation. Often you need carefully applied pressure and movement to help it heal.
The counterintuitive solution.
Or the example of phobia treatment, which is all about calculated progressive exposure therapy. You start with a picture of a spider and move towards confrontation, which goes completely against your natural impulse to run away.
And they connect this directly to vaccines. The medical principle is you introduce a weakened or controlled form of the disease to train the body's own defense and cleaning mechanisms.
So the student then applies this logic to the blind man scenario. What if the blindness was caused by something like chronic dry eye syndrome or just persistent grime?
Maybe introducing a controlled amount of dirt mixed with highly antiseptic saliva could have stimulated the eye's own cleaning mechanisms.
Like jump-starting a car's windscreen wipers that hadn't been used in a while.
And this attempt to rationalize, to look for a remedy, for logic, for a learned skill, a mechanism, it highlights the key cognitive shift between the Middle Ages and how we think now.
In the past, only the origin of the power was up for debate.
Today, our first impulse is to look for a verifiable, logical, mechanical explanation. The burden of proof has shifted from the source god or devil to the process. Is this a reproducible, learned skill?
That push for a rational explanation leads to a modern redefinition of magic itself.
Yeah, if magic is just something that a small, specialized group of people can do that's incomprehensible to the masses, then the speaker suggests every doctor is a magician nowadays.
They use magical potions.
Medicines with complex chemical structures to cure people. They achieve results that would have been defined as miracles 500 years ago. So magic is redefined as just high skill or specialized, powerful knowledge, not impossibility.
But the sources don't just reject the religious figure entirely. Instead, they give this high philosophical praise for Jesus.
Right. Regardless of the miracle debates, the focus shifts entirely to his character. His courage and integrity in his final moments, carrying the cross, facing death with this unwavering resolve that is presented as the definition of Stoicism.
And the realization of the ideal Stoic man.
It's the highest philosophical compliment you can give. It separates the man's actions and character, his integrity under ultimate duress, from all the theological arguments about his power.
So integrity, no matter what you believe, remains the highest value.
Exactly. And that same cold, hard, moment-to-moment assessment of reality, that integrity and recalibration, is precisely what determines success in the game of poker.
Okay, so let's shift gears and apply this philosophical idea of constant self-assessment and integrity to high-stakes strategy.
Let's do it.
This section is a crucial, detailed lesson in advanced poker thinking. The core concept is relative hand strength.
Which means you have to continuously recalibrate your hand's value. You have to recognize when it's one of the best or average or weakest hands in the current scenario.
Not based on its abstract, predetermined value.
Exactly. This is the practical application of the detachment we talked about. You cannot be emotionally attached to how strong your cards were before the flop.
That attachment is an ego trap.
It's a huge ego trap. A truly rational player has to instantly throw away that initial perceived value and reassess relative to the board and, critically, the opponent's range of possible hands.
So let's walk through the exact scenario from the sources to really get into the technical details.
Okay.
We have a player raising 5 big blinds, which is a pretty standard raise, with ace-queen suited, and he's up against 2 opponents who just limped in. They just called the minimum bet.
Right. So first, the context. A 5 big blind raise is strong. An ace-queen suited preflop is a very strong hand. The host grades it correctly at a 4 out of 5.
It's in the top tier of hands you should be playing aggressively.
It dominates hands like ace-jack, king-queen, a lot of pocket pairs.
Yeah.
And because the opponents just limped, they probably have a loose and dominated range.
Meaning they're holding weaker hands like queen 10 or suited connectors.
Exactly. So that boosts our winning equity from a conservative 35% up to maybe 45, 60%, depending on how loose they really are.
So we've got a strong hand, a 4 out of 5, good equity, playing against weak ranges. Everything feels great.
Everything is great.
But then comes the crucial moment, the flop. The board comes ace, 10, 9.
And suddenly the value structure just implodes.
Instantly.
Pre-flop, the absolute best hands were pocket aces or pocket kings. Now, on an ace-10-9 board, those hands get pushed down the list and the complexity just explodes.
Let's explain why that board is so dangerous.
It's an incredibly coordinated board. The cards are sequential, 9, 10, and they're connected to the ace. This means straights, open-ended straight draws, 2-pair hands are suddenly everywhere.
Right, so let's reorder the hierarchy of hands that would have likely raised pre-flop. Pocket jacks, for instance.
Pocket jacks are now monsters. They have an overpair to the 9 and 10, and they also have the absolute best possible straight draw. If a queen hits, they make the nut straight.
So jacks are now the effective nuts.
Or very close to it. Second would be pocket 9s or pocket 10s, which just hit a set 3 of a kind, immensely strong. Third, hands like king-queen or jack-queen now have open-ended straight draws that are often better than our ace-queen.
And where does our initial 4 out of 5 hand, ace-queen, now sit in all this? It hit an ace, so we have top pair. A beginner might feel great about that.
A beginner would feel fantastic, but a strong player has to realize that ace-queen is now significantly worse than ace-10.
And why is that?
Ace-queen is top pair, but it's top pair with a pretty weak kicker on a dangerous coordinated board. Ace-10, which was a weaker hand preflop, now has top pair and a 4-card straight draw that can go both ways.
Up to a queen or down to a 7?
Exactly. Ace-queen only makes a straight one way.
So the sources confirm this plunge. After you run through the whole list of hands the player would have raised with. Jacks, 9s, 10s, kings, queens. Ace-queen is now either dead last or second to last.
The 4 out of 5 hand preflop has become a 1 out of 5 hand relative to the current strategic environment.
And this plummeting value is made even worse by what they call poisoned outs.
Right. So with ace-queen, you're looking for a jack or a king to make a straight. But there's a problem. If a queen hits the river, okay, you make 2-pair, aces and queens. But that same queen might have just given a straight to an opponent holding jack 10.
So your out, the card that helps you, might help them even more.
Your outs are poisoned. They aren't clean.
The lesson here is just pure strategic detachment. A successful player has to immediately let go of the emotional attachment to how strong AQ was at the start and accept that they are now at the absolute bottom of their range.
And that psychological shift from feeling dominant to recognizing you are extremely vulnerable, that's the defining feature of high-level play.
And that recognition dictates your decision.
It has to. If we're playing against these loose opponents, being bottom of your range is a clear signal.
Yeah.
Fold. You have to minimize your losses with hands that have severely reduced equity and are likely to be dominated.
But let's take this to a more advanced level. For a really sophisticated player, if you're trying to play game theory optimal GTO against a perfect opponent,
Then being at the bottom of your range sometimes means you should bluff with that hand because your range has to include bluffs to be balanced.
but the sources are clear, against a loose recreational field, which these limpers are folding, is the most profitable, lowest variance play.
And the connection back to philosophy is essential here. Folding the bottom of your range is strategic patience. It's the stoic control over things you can't affect.
You can't change the flop.
You can only control your reaction. Detaching from the initial hope you had with ace-queen is the same as detaching from the false hope that a toxic social environment will magically get better.
You fold the bad hand, you seek solitude from the bad environment.
Both are acts of rational recalibration.
It connects right to the four-category system you find in advanced training courses, like the upswing reference in the source. The logic is fundamental. Bottom range hands get folded to minimize risk. Top range hands get bet for maximum value.
And if you fail to recalibrate, you end up playing a 1 out of 5 hand as if it's still a 4 out of 5. And that is a guaranteed recipe for losing your bankroll.
And, philosophically, losing your inner peace.
It's integrity, applied mathematically. You have to be honest with yourself about the reality of your situation, even when that reality is painful or disappointing. Hashtag tag outro.
So our deep dive today has spanned millennia. We've gone from ancient Stoic principles to the modern math of a card table. And it's all revealed one universal principle.
The profound importance of continuous recalibration.
Detachment from your initial expectations, whether it's realizing your 4 out of 5 poker hand has plummeted to a 1, or recognizing the toxicity of social friction, or accepting the difficult, unpopular parts of a philosophy.
That detachment is the key. It's the key to making rational, profitable decisions for both your wallet and your soul.
The sources bring this all full circle by emphasizing substance over just fleeting appearance. They spend time discussing self-image, and they note that the modern desire to look a certain way.
The right clothes, conforming to beauty standards.
It's largely, they say, an ego trip. They suggest that honoring your ancestors or just your own genetic reality, the way you naturally look, is a much healthier frame of mind than chasing these constantly changing subjective beauty standards designed by consumer culture.
They distill it down to a quantifiable scale of value.
Which is brilliant. External appearances, things like your clothing, your physical looks, even the blood from a shaved head, which is used as this powerful metaphor for superficial effort.
All of that is worth only 1 or 2 points on a scale of 10.
But inner peace, integrity, self-mastery.
That's worth 7 or 8 points. So the final lesson is clear. Concentrate your effort and attention on substance and inner peace. The external stuff has minimal long-term impact on your overall well-being.
And as we close, we have to return to that almost unsettling observation that framed the whole poker lesson.
The magical coincidence of the perfect teaching moment just materializing in the cards.
Yeah, and it forces you to reconsider the relationship between your mind and reality. The sources reference that well-known, if highly debated, observation from quantum physics. Matter reacts differently when you look at it than when you don't look at it.
It's a powerful final thought.
It is. If our focused attention, our deep strategic interest, our intellectual intensity can genuinely influence the appearance of events, manifesting the exact scenario needed for a lesson at the precise moment it's needed, it raises a fascinating and I think provocative question for you to consider this week.
And what's that?
What other connections between mind, reality, and strategy are we failing to recognize in our daily lives simply because we aren't applying that kind of intense, detached, philosophical attention?
Something to mull over until our next deep dive.
Welcome to the debate. So today, we're going to be talking about something I think is quite fundamental. Is this persistent challenge, the one faced by anyone who's really dedicated to serious reflection? How should the thoughtful, intellectual, the wise person, let's say, interact with society?
And it's a deeply resonant question, isn't it? Especially now. I think many of us feel that modern social life is often, it's draining, it feels performative, or just difficult to navigate while trying to maintain any kind of intellectual integrity.
Precisely. And that's the central question from our source material today. Does achieving genuine philosophical insight and sustaining personal peace, does that necessitate a complete withdrawal into solitude? Or is some form of meaningful social engagement actually required for intellectual development? I'm going to argue for the former, that solitude is essential for insight and, maybe more importantly, for self-preservation.
And I'm going to come at it from a fundamentally different angle. While I absolutely share the critique that modern society, especially at scale, is exhausting and flawed, I maintain that humans are, we're profoundly wired for community, for small, intimate groups specifically, and that real intellectual maturity actually demands the friction and the rigor you get from high-quality discussion. So the debate for me isn't about avoiding people, it's about finding the right few.
Well, my position is it's really rooted in the practical mechanics of how intellectual work gets done. If we're honest about where our profound breakthroughs actually happen, those real moments of discovery, they almost invariably happen when I am alone. whether it's intensely analyzing a complex system like a market or, internally debating a philosophical concept. That isolation provides the necessary mental bandwidth.
Mm-hmm.
Being constantly with people, it just imposes this cognitive burden. The energy spent on social signaling, on navigating etiquette, on simply listening to trivial things, it actively prevents that light bulb moment from ever igniting. Society in this context, it sort of functions as an invisible cage. It's bound by these arbitrary laws and customs and expectations that just stifle intellectual acceleration. You know that feeling we've discussed? Being a high-performance machine forced to drive at pedestrian speeds.
Yeah, the Formula One car in traffic.
Exactly. Or those magnificent falcons we see in zoos, just confined to cages far too small for them. So solitude is the only way to break free from that drag. Limiting interaction isn't misanthropy, it's just optimization. The interaction rarely adds meaningful substance, and often it actively detracts from your inner peace by forcing you into these truly dysfunctional social dynamics that demand emotional labor for no intellectual reward.
I absolutely understand the attraction of that argument, the idea that you have to retreat to achieve your full capacity. But I find that premise a little too passive. While I completely agree that prolonged time among most people is often boring, conformist, and frankly irritating, the manners, the predictable opinions, that shouldn't lead us to conclude that solitude is the only path. I mean, complete isolation, while it can be productive for bursts of analysis, it quickly gives way to loneliness and, I think, worse, to intellectual stagnation.
The ideal, as shown in the material and, by historical figures, just think of Plato and Socrates walking and talking. It's not total isolation, but the relentless pursuit of high-quality, interesting discussion. I would argue the fundamental failure is structural. Modern society, especially large anonymous cities, it just grossly exceeds the natural human capacity for genuine social connection, which, based on evolutionary psychology, seems to be wired for small groups, maybe around 30 stable connections. When you go beyond that limit, you're constantly on guard.
Right.
You have to view strangers with a necessary suspicion, which makes every social interaction fundamentally stressful and uncomfortable. And that's irrespective of our innate, deep-seated need for some kind of communal intellectual development.
That's a very compelling diagnosis of modern living, I'll grant you that. But I think you fundamentally misdiagnosed the solution for the sensitive individual. Let's talk about self-preservation. The source material describes the highly observant person, the one sometimes called the empath, whose sensitivity gives them this powerful, almost unsettling ability to spot shortcomings, hypocrisy, deceit in other people.
Okay.
Now, if this person is so highly tuned to that kind of inaccuracy and dysfunction, their life immediately becomes, well, hell when they try to integrate into a large group. And why? Because the group inevitably rejects the truth teller. If you constantly point out the flaws in accepted ideas, or you criticize some mediocre product that everyone else is praising, the collective response isn't curiosity, it's hostility. So solitude transitions from being a preference for deep work into being the absolutely necessary defense mechanism to prevent perpetual psychological agonizing. The cage isn't just invisible, it's actively painful for the person who sees clearly.
I appreciate the defense of the highly sensitive mind, I do. But I find that approach fundamentally flawed as an intellectual strategy. It places all of the pressure on the external world and then proposes flight as the only remedy. I'm sorry, but I just don't buy that the intellectual's only move is to run away. If we acknowledge that most people are, in some way, inherently irritating, their speech habits, their eating habits, the tedious recycling of the same opinions, then we have to train ourselves to process that irritation internally.
So you're saying just endure it?
Not just endure it, but manage it. We should aim to take others as they are, without letting their flaws pollute our inner state. We should treat these social pressures not as existential threats, but more like background noise. A burst of wind or a thunderstorm, they're natural phenomena you guard against, but you don't flee the continent over them.
If we are genuinely wired for connection, then total flight is just an unsustainable and ultimately an intellectually bankrupt strategy. It starves the mind of necessary challenge.
But that challenge you're seeking can be generated internally with far greater efficiency. I have to reaffirm this. Every truly significant structural or philosophical insight I have ever had came when I was debating with myself, alone. The greatest strategic achievements, the moments that really shape a trajectory, they happen away from the constant distraction of the crowd. Look at external social consumption. The time we spend on what we call bad movies or meaningless social events. It is a definitive waste of finite time that yields zero intellectual production. If the ultimate goal is wisdom and maximum output, then the input has to be curated and focused, which just naturally demands solitude. The great philosophical advancements didn't emerge from town hall meetings. They emerged from minds in focused isolation.
That's an interesting point, but it risks confusing efficiency with objectivity. While personal insight is, of course, invaluable for formulation, the ultimate goal of a wise person isn't just internal peace. It's establishing depth, validity, objective meaning in their ideas. And that cannot be done purely internally. If you only debate yourself, you risk creating a perfect echo chamber, where your own clever formulation becomes indistinguishable from established truth.
A fair point.
The refinement of an idea, the process of finding its weaknesses, absolutely requires a rigorous external challenge. You need someone who holds a genuinely unique mixture of opinions, not for social connection, but to test the very foundations of your internal concepts. The material highlighted that people gravitate towards similarity for safety reasons, but that drive for conformity actively suppresses the intellectual friction that is so necessary for growth. Solitude might be the forge, I'll give you that, but high-quality engagement is the necessary testing block.
Let's go back to the issue of scale then, because I think it informs this tension. The unnatural state of living in these large, anonymous groups is what destroys the possibility of that quality connection you're talking about. If the brain is built to handle a small group of, say, 30 people, then living in a city of millions puts us on a constant war footing. We are perpetually defensive, guarding against being pickpocketed, hustled, or just having our time wasted. This chronic stress is antithetical to deep thought and to peace.
I agree. The city makes wisdom profoundly difficult because it makes genuine, unguarded connection almost impossible. I would much prefer the hypothetical safety of a village, a real community, where everyone is known. That alignment with our biological wiring is what enables the kind of small-scale discussion that Socrates could enjoy. If we can't find that village, then the retreat isn't an intellectual failing. It's a logical survival mechanism against an environment built to maximize anxiety.
And I see why you advocate for that village model. And I agree entirely with your critique of this societal scale. The psychological load of the invisible cage, that feeling that you're constantly monitored or prevented from doing what you want, is the primary source of friction. And the observation that the brain lights up defensively when encountering a stranger, that just reinforces my initial position. Why even seek out the friction? Why attempt to force an unnatural level of connection when withdrawal offers genuine cognitive relief and superior production? You're arguing for managing a constant threat. I am arguing for eliminating the threat entirely so I can focus on the 8 points of inner peace that our source material values so highly. The divergence is clear. We both see that large-scale society is misaligned with human biology. You choose to endure it through internal management and the search for an ideal group, and I choose to escape it completely through solitude.
But the pursuit of that inner peace you mentioned is dependent on achieving intellectual honesty, which brings us to a crucial related point: authenticity. The intense pressure of large society, that invisible cage, it often manifests as a demand for outward conformity, particularly in terms of appearances. Whether it's following subjective beauty standards, engaging in hyperconsumerism, or adhering to transient fashion, all of this is just an external ego trip driven by social anxiety. If the truly thoughtful person is trying to honor their authentic self, what you might call honoring the genes I have,
They have to minimize their focus on these external trappings. We waste immense intellectual energy trying to perform for the crowd rather than focusing on the substance of our character and our work.
Absolutely. This perfectly illustrates why solitude is so protective. If we are seeking wisdom and stable contentment, we have to concentrate on that inner peace, which our material suggests holds 8 points of genuine happiness. Contrast that with external appearance and superficial validation, which might only provide 1 or 2 points of transient satisfaction. Whether our path is solitude or extremely selective engagement, the guiding principle has to be focus relentlessly on substance, not on appearances or the demands of the crowd. Solitude simply makes that focus easier to maintain.
But this is where the tension remains. If we accept that the external demands of appearance are essentially an ego trip, doesn't complete withdrawal risk turning the internal life into a different kind of ego trip, an untested, pristine internal reality that loses its grounding in the messy complexity of actual existence? I mean, the intellectual pursuit is supposed to elevate us, not just insulate us. If the goal is self-preservation, solitude works perfectly. If the goal is objective truth, I remain skeptical that you can find it without some external challenge.
That's an excellent point about the risk of intellectual fragility in solitude. The defense against that, of course, is the structure of the solitary work itself. The wise person must rigorously simulate the external challenge internally, testing premises against counter-evidence and historical analogs, essentially maintaining a ruthless, ongoing internal dialectic. The quality of the output has to remain paramount. The solitary mind must be its own fiercest critic.
But even the most rigorous internal critic has blind spots, informed by his own cognitive architecture. The true strength of the Socrates and Plato model is the inherent unpredictability of the external mind. They introduce ideas you hadn't considered, or they critique your foundational assumptions in ways you couldn't have anticipated because you built the foundation yourself. If we view the pursuit of wisdom as a climb toward a higher intellectual peak, solitude might allow for the initial ascent, but that external challenge provides the necessary equipment and safety checks to ensure the climb is sustainable and that the peak is real and not just a mirage. We have to be willing to endure the irritation of society for the occasional, indispensable gift of intellectual sparring.
So as we conclude, it seems we find a lot of common ground in a deep critique of the shallowness and stress of modern social life. We agree that large-scale interaction is often boring, defensive, and profoundly lacking in intellectual depth. My position prioritizes the solitary environment as the essential precondition for self-preservation and for the consistent generation of high intellectual output. I believe avoidance is necessary to prevent the contaminating effects of a dysfunctional society, allowing the thinker to concentrate fully on those 8 points of inner peace, the substance of a well-examined life.
And I would emphasize that while the need for distance and curated engagement it's undeniable, the core failure lies not in the human desire for connection, but in the unnatural, scaled structure of modern life. The thoughtful individual is simply wired for small, quality groups. The quest for wisdom, in my view, requires deliberate, careful management of the external environment, pursuing meaningful small-scale connection rather than a total retreat, just to ensure our ideas are tempered by reality and rigor.
The material really leaves us with a necessary tension to navigate. The path to wisdom clearly involves a highly disciplined management of one's environment. We are left to ponder whether the truly wise person can fully thrive while engaging with a world that seems so fundamentally misaligned with human nature, or if the gravity of intellectual integrity inevitably pulls that thinker toward the periphery. It's a complex, ongoing balance we all have to explore.
Welcome. I have a poker lesson that starts in 2 minutes. We are going to talk about poker, some philosophic subject. I will start with showing you my 5 books that are available for pure search on Amazon. This is my 5th book. I did write it in French. It's called La Voie du Samouraï Stoïque. I have translated it in English, The Way of the Stoic Diamond. In German, it's called Der Weg des Stoischen Diamond. My 4th book is Stoic Samurai. That's the English version. The French version is Un Samouraï Stoique. I did translate, but I didn't do the work to put it on Amazon for now, the German version. I hope I will be able to do that. Now I'll jump in the call.
I was like a German train today because I'm late so much.
They're always
How
late.
They are, I've heard at least. I don't remember my experience. The joke is something like Germans say how accurate they always are with time and stuff like that, and their train network is not very accurate. They were late. I don't remember exactly.
Probably too many regulations. That makes everything slower. That's why everybody
Maybe
comes late.
Could be you always have to completely lost track of time. That happens quite rarely. I know our lesson was coming up, then next thing I looked at the clock, it was already a few minutes to it. I made it. I'm in a good mood also. How
That's
are you?
awesome. I'm all right, thank you.
Is your throat good? It sounds a little like you could have a cold.
Well, it's a little irritated. I don't have a cold, although my piano teacher did give me one. It's already passed.
It's from smoking cigarettes.
No, I don't know. It's just the room temperature. And sometimes you're hot, sometimes you're cold. My vocal cords are a little irritated. It's nothing too bad. I'm surprised that you can hear it.
Me too. I don't think I'm usually so observant. How's your piano lessons going overall?
Not too bad. I did do a couple of exceptions for that piano teacher. I normally don't like shaking hands. I don't find it hygienic, and people touch a lot of stuff, and not all that is clean. They will not wash the hand just before they shake my hand. Don't like actually touching a lot of people. There are people you like, you love, family members, that's different. Any stranger to touch everybody, it's strange to me. Normally I don't do it. However, for that piano teacher, I made an exception. Last time she had a huge cold. She was sniffing all the time. Her nose didn't stop running. I shook her hand and I did get the cold. It was just annoying for 4 days. That's one of the reasons why I don't do it. Next time I see her this week, I'll tell her that I stop doing that. She might take it bad, but I'll try to explain it to her.
Basically, in English, you just use you for everyone. And the difference between formal and informal speech is all about how polite your wording is, not a special pronoun.
We have a pronoun for the polite version to talk to somebody, a pronoun for when you are with friends and intimate. The Portuguese have the same. I don't know every language who does. I can ask ChatGPT, he will give you the list of all the language who have a formal, polite way of talking to people. I don't know if in Estonia it exists.
We do have a little bit like this. If we're friends with someone, we call them he or she, although we don't have genders. There's like a word for like a person you're talking to. Then the plural form of that, so if you were like talking to a group of people, we use that plural form when talking to a singular person if we want to be polite with them. In English, it's tough to explain because in English, if it's you or you in plural, it would be the same.
For me, it makes sense. Because when we talk the formal, polite version, that pronoun, it actually is the same pronoun as when you talk to a crowd. To me, it makes perfect sense. I want to stop talking to her like if she is my friend using the informal pronoun. But this one will be hard to explain to her. I have to try in some way or another.
But switch back to the formal pronoun. That is a bit strange. I don't think it usually goes that way unless there's an argument or a problem, then sometimes.
I have to explain to her that there's no problem. I just think it's more normal to use that one. She's not in my intimacy. She's just my piano teacher. Why should I shake hands all the time and use informal pronoun? I can just talk to her like I talk to people who I respect and have some distance to them. Marianne, she told me that the Portuguese, when they're educated of the higher class, they keep the formal pronoun even for the family members, the kids. They keep talking to them with the formal pronoun. A question of respect to show that they are the elder one and they are the kids. They keep that. They never switch to the informal pronoun. To me, even that makes sense. Now, for my kid, I wouldn't do it, but it makes sense to me. You'll tell me if you even do it with your kids, for who do you make an exception? I don't know. You have to ask Marianne. She knows more about her culture than I do. Maybe for people you're friendly with and go drink something in a bar. I know you want to say something. Go ahead, Norman.
Yes, I want to say it's very hard not to say something when I want to say something. I want to say that you inspired me to use the formal pronoun more. What I'm thinking is I will use it with my closest friends as a joke for some time, because I do think there's something very endearing about it, really. If you're being formal to someone you've known for 10 years or someone who's family member, there's something playful, respectful, and nice about it. So I'll try that. I'll be very formal with my close people for some time.
That's something strange. When you talk about a philosophic subject, people always like to make fun of it, as if it is meaningless or just something you should make a joke out of it. I don't take it bad. That's not the thing. That's what you did. I'm talking about a serious subject. You turn it into a joke. That actually
For me, for my own happiness.
I like laughing. I like jokes, especially if they're funny. It's all right. I never take jokes badly. It's great if we find something we can laugh about. Why do we do it that much about anything that has anything to do with philosophy? Why then do we especially think we have to make it hilarious? That's something that is strange to me. It comes to my train of thought that I had recently. How it can be that in the world we live, we have little wise men, because I really would enjoy to listen more to people who talk about wisdom, to have achieved some higher level at it. Might it be Buddhism or something else, any Stoic, any philosophic school, somebody who truly is that. I would like to listen to a cynic. I really want him to be a cynic. I just don't want him to give me a history lesson. I'm not interested in that. There's always a difference between knowing something and actually living it. The living part is philosophy. Knowing something, that's something you learn in school. It's meaningless. Or that ChatGPT can teach. It's totally meaningless. Living it is a difference. It's like the difference, for example, you might know perfectly well that drinking too much is bad for you or smoking is not good for you, but you still can't stop either of them. The knowledge is not enough. You have to be capable to turn it in action and make it your new habit, your new way of living or thinking about the world. People say it's psychology. It's also philosophy, if you think about it, because you have to choose between different way of existing and living your life. That's a very philosophic subject. But very few people are philosophic. When they are, they normally take from philosophy what they like. Everything that is hard, they will reject. Then they get some popularity if they reject everything that is hard. For example, Buddhism teaches poverty. They want you to live a simple and poor life. The real Buddhist, he must be not starving. He must be very thin and very poor. Of course, that's not popular. A lot of people who nowadays practice Buddhism will just forget about all that teaching. Look at it like if it is meaningless, while it is not. When you do that, you're not being honest. You should be able to tell your audience why that teaching exists and also explain that you're not the wisest man on earth. Your shortcomings make you not follow it 100%. You try to improve, but for now you're not following it 100%. That's the honest approach. Not just saying, oh, that's nonsense. You don't have to do that. You can be as wealthy as you want. Enjoy life as much as you want. If you teach that, then there's no point in philosophy. Everybody does that. You don't have to be philosophic to do that. Sorry for my small rant.
I was thinking that's similar to how people live religion, that they only take the good parts of it.
Exactly.
Somehow, what it reminds me of, there's this saying, it's our local saying of, if you can't do the whole homework, do half of it. Even though it's considered a bad thing in school, if you only do half of your homework, it's still better than doing no homework, is to do half of the homework.
There's a difference. Then you don't say that the other half is crap. They say the other half is crap. It doesn't have to be done. That's the issue. I think it's very good if you start somewhere and you do what you can do. And one day maybe you will improve and you do a little more. That's all fine. But it doesn't give you the right to just dismiss everything else. Act like if all the rest is meaningless. There might be some stuff that is philosophically wrong. Then you have to be able to explain it. That's actually very rarely the case. Most people just do it for convenience, to be popular. If you say, I'm a Buddhist and I'm going to talk about Buddhism, and Buddhism think it's a virtue to be slim, poor, close to starving to death, Well, there are not many people who stay and listen to you. We talked enough about that. Unless you want to add something, you can tell me what we do today regarding poker. I don't have any marked hands. If you want to come back to the subject, go ahead.
No, I don't think I had too many thoughts on that at the moment. It's human psychology. To me, it's too much to worry about other people's psychology. I take them like I would take a burst of wind or a thunderstorm or a sunset. At least I try, not always. I try to take them as they are, just myself to sort of protect myself or feel good regarding them.
You look a lot at the psychology when you sit at the poker table. Then it matters a lot to you. Hell is everybody else. He wanted to tell you that living with people is very hard.
Impossible. Almost impossible.
I've published a video about an empath. It is somebody who Carl Jung created, or he heard about it. Empath is a very sensitive person. For him, everybody else is hell more than for a normal person. When he goes to work or at school, he sees through the lies of the people around him. His opinion, actually, Carl Jung did test them. He said he was right in what he says 97% of the time, the empath. Because of that, his life becomes hell, because the group will reject him. At work, for example, when everybody admires the director, he will point out all the shortcomings of the director. When everybody says it's a great business, he will tell the facts and that it sucks. The more time passes, the more people hate him. Even the family members, the parents or the siblings, everybody hates him. In reality, I believe he messed his research up a little, but according to you, he's correct 97% of the time. Was he totally wrong? Jung pointed out something that is true. Certain people who are very observant, just as you are, when you hear my voice or you ask me if I'm in a good mood or not, you can see stuff that most people would be incapable of seeing. If you're very sensitive, you can pick up on hints that other people would ignore. Well, your life easily becomes hell. They suffer a lot till they totally stop interacting with people, taking a huge distance and living in solitude. Until then, they suffer a lot. I found that really interesting. What do you think?
There's a lot of examples from history of philosophers living away from people. Somehow monks come to mind, which I know is a religious subject. In many ways, religion and philosophy has been connected in history, at least. There's been Christian scholars or Buddhist philosophers as well. Somehow monks seem something similar, that they decide to distance themselves from the day-to-day, just live as a group of monks. Then I'm quite a bit sensitive, especially thinking of childhood. I cried a lot or was just quite emotional in many aspects. Well, tough to compare yourself to others, at least to me. Sometimes it seemed that way, although we all have our emotions to deal with. Sometimes it's not sure if someone's more sensitive or they're just worse at dealing with their emotions. It's true, noticing some things, not everyone. For me personally, there's a lot of ways people irritate me. The way they are, they talk, how they eat, everything, their manners, their culture, their opinions. Opinions can be very irritating, how boring they are overall. How they just say what's fed to them, essentially, what's popular that day. Then maybe they separate themselves to right wing or left wing. They're overall just not unique enough to me. I would like more people being like a personality, like every person being a unique mixture of opinions, of experiences. Everyone is, of course. It's tough to see that, at least. People really try to gravitate to be similar for safety reasons, for social reasons. It's quite tiring, annoying, and boring. I feel like sometimes when I'm long time amongst people, it's like I get programmed to be like them. I see that effect within myself. That if I don't take time to be by myself, then I start to lose something. It feels a little bit like you're a Formula One car. Now you're driving in the normal traffic. You're following all the traffic rules and you're going your 50 kilometers in the city. or 90 kilometers an hour on the highway or 110. It feels like I'm not being the way I could be. As for a Formula One car, if they're on a track, that's where the Formula One car can really show their true potential. It's a bit like being a caged bird in a way. I went to the zoo recently. There was this glorious, huge falcons. Yeah, these huge birds. They lived in those small cages where they couldn't really fly at all. The most one big bird I saw do, he was on like a tree trunk or something. It just flapped its wings, like pretending to fly. It couldn't actually fly, it just then flapped its wings. It could feel a little bit like it's flying. It can feel a bit like that. There's differences in people. That's a fact. If someone's a very good athlete, then it would be boring for them to do sports with normal people. If someone's a good driver, they want to drive a Formula One car. If someone's a good runner, they want to run with the Kenyans, some training group that makes it interesting. For guys like you and me, it's quite boring, just a normal way people talk. It doesn't give us too much other than just disappointment and annoyance. Just wish for there to be more depth and meaning to it. I don't think it's only that the solitude helps to find yourself in some ways, to feel good, although at the end of the day, it still can feel quite lonely. What would be even better? It would be to find the people to have interesting discussions with. Plato could talk to Socrates. It's not easy to find people that you like.
I like your critique of society, Norman. I largely agree with it. I don't want to say 100% because you are you and I am I. So there must be a difference between your opinions and mine. But I largely agree with it. The story about the birds that cannot fly and live in small cages is quite sad. Sometimes I feel like I'm one of those birds. All the laws around me did create an invisible cage that most of the things that I would like to do, I cannot do anymore. Talking about solitude, my best idea, the best things I did during my life, they always came to me when I was alone, when I was debating with myself or analyzing the markets. When I'm with people, rarely do I get insights. Very rarely does a light bulb light up. I tell myself, now I'll do something. When I'm with people, it's like when I consume Holy Weird, a movie, all those bad movies. I tell myself, now why did I do that? Why did I waste 30 minutes or 1.5 hours by watching with it when there was nothing in it that could pique my curiosity or bring anything meaningful to my life? That's the feeling when I get. I try to not spend too much time with people because it doesn't really add anything to my life. For example, Marianne, she wants us to be friends. She wants me to start reading her messages again. She invited me for Christmas. She never does that. She normally invites me for New Year. This time she wanted even to invite me for Christmas. I don't think I will go because she has a dysfunctional household. Her relationship with her husband is very dysfunctional. I actually did see a movie that was the best one I saw. It's called Buffalo 66. You see a guy who really wants to please his parents. He does everything, legal or illegal, to please his parents. But his parents hate him. They're extremely mean to him. It's just totally dysfunctional. If they invite you to a meal, which happens in the movie, his parents invite him, well, it's hell. You should not assist to it. You should not go to that. It's extremely dysfunctional. Marianne, the way she lives with her husband is also really dysfunctional. Christmas is a time you spend with your family. If I suddenly show up, then George will be mad all evening. Then I have to live through that. His bad humor during the entire evening. Don't want to mess up my day. I won't go. I actually just prefer my solitude to that. One more thing. You talked about the similarities between religion and philosophy. There's, in my opinion, a huge difference. Normal philosophers don't make the mistake. That's actually great when they don't do this mistake. The big issue with Jesus was that some argued he wasn't the Son of God, he was a magician. He did some magic tricks. Some argued that. The greatest critic, I don't remember his name, during the Middle Ages, said that he went to Egypt, he learned magic there. Then he came back and he did those magic tricks. These tricks were quite common. He wasn't the only one who did them at that time. Now, people during the entire Middle Ages, people actually didn't debate that it is magic because something supernatural happens. A blind man suddenly can see again. Something not natural, not normal happens when Jesus does his thing. The entire question was, from where comes the power of that magic? And Christianity argued very strongly that that power is of divine origin. His father, who is God, gave him that power. During the entire Middle Ages, they argued that his power was divine, not from the devil. When we look at how they argued, did they make the difference? Could they say, oh, this trick was made with God intervention, the other one was made with the intervention of the devil? There was no clear thing you can point to that distinguished two acts. One from God and the other one, the guy has to be burned alive because he's working for the devil, or the woman has to be burned alive. There was no clear distinction you can point out. No fact you can say if the power was divine or came from the devil. The only thing that makes the difference is if you like the guy. If you like the guy, if you approve of what he did, then you say it comes from God. And if you dislike him, then you say he's a magician. His power comes from the devil. Then he gets burned. The idea is they don't look at the result. They only want to know from where the power comes. They thought that without the intervention of God or the devil, it wasn't possible. That's what they thought at that age. To me, this makes very little sense. The issue is to do miracles, to consider that some people can perform miracles and others cannot. That makes very little sense to me. I know that the crowd likes it because then it's easier to adore somebody and think he has some supernatural powers. He's different than we all. Because of that, we worship him. Now, then you make a religion out of it. Normally, philosophers never do that. There were a lot of magicians that performed miracles. There were a lot at the time of Jesus. It is the Roman state who made up a new law. Said, if you do magic tricks, you will be sanctioned. You will end up on the cross or something else. They made a new law. At that time, calling somebody a magician was an insult. Christianity had to fight very hard that people don't believe that Jesus is a magician. They never doubted that somebody could heal to normal stuff, to a remedy or something else. That actually it wasn't magic, it's just something we didn't understand. That question came never up. The only question that came up during the entire Middle Ages was the origin of the power. I talk about all that to show you the difference between philosophy and religion. I don't like when you go into the supernatural, you start talking about miracles. It makes very little sense to do so. Because if it's just a question of miracle, then what can you do? There are people who can perform miracles and the others can't. All you can become is a believer. Philosophy should teach you how to live miracles, even if you can perform any miracles. What do you think about my rant to point out the difference?
With the last thought, somehow want to say that Jesus didn't only predict miracles, he tried to teach people the way of living. He had a lot of opinions. He argued with many, like the dogmas or the beliefs at the time. Everyone said this is like the law, everyone has to do it. He had his own opinions on this. So overall, with the miracle things, comes to mind how you could say every doctor is a magician nowadays. They have a magical potions, which is their medicines, and then people take it and they get cured, sometimes at least. It's not clear what is a magician. Somehow it seems where it's just a question of definition, that we just think we define magician as something that's impossible. It doesn't necessarily have to be impossible. A magician can just do something that they're very skilled of, like healing people, or just having some ability that normal people don't. Otherwise, if magician does something that's impossible, then it just means he's a fraudster. That's how people define it. Magician is just frauding people, doing something as a trickery to them. Then I don't maybe agree with that, although who knows? I don't really like commenting on things which happened thousands of years ago. How do I know? I'm not a historian, I'm not an archaeologist, I'm not any of that. Overall, with the Jesus story, they usually at least talk about it in a way where he didn't just do trickery on people. He actually had some abilities or skills which people at that time didn't have. Now, maybe it would have some logical explanation. Maybe it doesn't have to be otherworldly. Maybe he just knew a bit more about medicines or knew about physics or the weather, some ways that could explain some of these things. Although the story goes, he was just connected to like the matrix or the source code of the world. He was like a programmer in a video game or a director in a movie who can just make everything happen. That's how it's explained. Overall, what came to my mind is every doctor is a magician in any way, in every way. For me, I like to think of magician as someone who can do something I can't do or understand. To me, if someone can jump like super high or sprint very quickly, to me, that's magic. To me, anything really, that's how I like to think. Then in my mind, with the religion, somehow religion can be sometimes boring because I don't know, I don't really care so much either, to be honest. Maybe I'm lying, my voice is going. It's not that I don't care, maybe that's not fair. It's more that what can I say? I don't know enough about all that stuff. I don't care enough about history to think I need to figure all of that out. If it was true or not, start reading like some old church documents from thousands of years ago or something. I don't have a good reply on that. It's just, I don't know. I have not seen Jesus myself. I don't know. Even if I did, I don't know if I can trust my eyes. There's magicians nowadays. There's people nowadays who say they can cure blindness, stuff like that. Now, maybe he actually could. A lot of people believe in him. I hope they believe in the right thing. I hope it's a good belief to have. It's a better belief to have than believe in something just very dark things like the world has to be destroyed, everything's evil, all that stuff. If people want to believe in some good things, overall, to me, truth is quite important. So that's the frustrating part. I would like to know, but I don't know. That's why I don't like these discussions, because I feel like a dumb person talking about religion, because I don't know. Then everyone has some opinion about it, some belief about it. That makes me feel very stupid. I like talking about things where it's more obvious to me, or at least I have more confidence in my beliefs. That's all that comes to mind. I don't know if it was too good of an answer.
Every answer you give is good, Norman. As long as you're honest and you try, it's always great. There are no good answers or bad answers. Just try to be sincere. You do that. I always appreciate it. Thank you, Norman. Now, did you watch The Passion of Christ from Mel Gibson?
A long time ago, I really liked the movie. It's like the music, the visuals. It was a bit like theater. I like musicals, actually. There's not too many musicals out there, at least good one. Not too many out there overall.
I bring it up because if you can die like that, then you are a Stoic. It doesn't matter what you did or what you say. You're the definition of Stoicism. When you have that much courage, that much integrity, the day you have to die, you are Stoic. You have realized the ideal of a Stoic man. I tell you that just to explain to you that I will always have the highest respect for Jesus because of his final moments when he had to carry his cross and died on it, how he did it. I cannot do anything else. Admire him for that. Now, to come back about our magic tricks, here's one of his magic tricks. He took some earth, the stuff you find on the ground. He put it in his mouth. He started chewing it, mixing it with his saliva. Then he put it on the eyes of a blind person. He could see again. Like, according to me, that's not a very hygienic treatment. I'm not sure that if I see somebody who tells me I'm going to take some dirt that I find on the ground, I'm going to chew it and I'll put it in your eyes, I'm not sure that that is a very hygienic treatment. If you do that most of the times, it will make you sick. It will make stuff worse. It's just to tell you that, of course, with Jesus, if it works, if he really has that power, then you can make an exception. I don't want any doctors who do that kind of treatment because it will make you just sick. That is gross.
I don't have a problem with that because in my experience, the answers are often counterintuitive. What would be an example? If you're injured something, you need to give it some time to rest. If you give it rest, then it starts to deform. It starts to lose the muscles and structure. Actually, part of the healing process is you have to put more pressure on that thing. That's something that could be counterintuitive. Massage is like that in a way. You have a muscle that hurts, then what do? You hurt it even more. You start pressurizing it, really squishing that muscle, making it hurt even more short term, so that long term you would feel better about it. Sometimes life can be counterintuitive in this way. I wouldn't be surprised if making the eye hurt by having just some dirt in it would make in a way where the body starts, because animals live in the nature, they have to clean their eyes somehow. Maybe there's this thing that gets turned on in the human body, that like a car, when on the window, the windscreen wipers start to go on. Maybe with the eye as well. What would I guess? If you put some dirt in the eye, probably it starts to secrete some bodily fluid to clean the eye. Maybe the eye needs that if it's like a dry eye syndrome or something. I'm completely talking just some wild stuff here. I can see how it could somehow work. There could be some logic to it. Many things are like this. I'm thinking of like phobias, for example. What do they do if someone's very afraid of spiders? Well, if I remember it correctly, they first show him a picture of a spider, maybe even a drawn picture. Scary from a long way from it. Once he gets used to that, then at some point they'll show him a picture of an actual spider. Then maybe an actual scary spider, like a tarantula. Then at some point he might actually be able to hold that picture and look it close. Then at the end of it, that person step by step could even go to the zoo, maybe have a spider walk on them or something. It would happen very long term. In a way, it's counterintuitive. It's like the medicine is what you don't want. Like the medicine is the illness. It's connected. The vaccines are the same way. Vaccine is just a mutated form of disease which the body can kill. The disease is dangerous. Then the doctors, they just make the disease a little bit weaker. It's like they cut off a limb of a disease or something. It's like a human form of that disease. It's a human-made copy of that disease. Now it's a bit weaker. The body can get rid of that disease. Then once body is rid of a disease, it can learn the mechanism of it. The body learns the technique, then can start to create antibodies itself to fight with the actual disease. That's similar to what you said. That's the best example I have. Why would you put dirt in an eye of someone, an issue with their eye? If you're scared of some disease, why would you put that disease in that person's body? You would put that there because you have to fight on things on your own terms. If dirt comes to your eye all of a sudden, that's a big problem. Maybe if it puts the right amount in the right way, it can make some sense, just like how massaging with the right pressure can make sense, or how putting the disease through a vaccine in a body can make it so the body can overcome the disease, develop the antibodies. It makes some sense to me in how my logic works of the world. I could see some way back, thousands of years ago, very primitive people, almost no technology at that moment, to know something about how the human body works, to have some skills that we have lost nowadays. Just like we learn new things, we forget a lot of things. I have a lot of belief that the ancient Egyptians or the Stoics or all these people probably had some big wisdom and skills that we've just lost in time. I have doubts about that.
It's true. I even talk about it in one of my books, the fourth one, Stoic Samurai. Norman, people have changed because what you just did, trying to explain it in a rational manner, that they never did during the Middle Ages. They all accepted that it was magic. They only wanted to know from where the magic comes, from God or the devil. That was the only subject that they debated. Never if it really happened. Also not if it actually could be just a remedy that works and that he has learned somewhere. That they never looked at. The rational thinking didn't enter the mind. The only thing that did is the origin of the power. That was the only important stuff during the Middle Ages. People have changed. since you try to rationalize it, analyze it to a logic way of doing it. I actually think that every philosopher should do that. You shouldn't rely on magic or supernatural intervention. I don't think it's necessary. Thank you a lot for that discussion, Norman. It was really long, in depth, about some interesting subjects. What would you like to do for poker today?
I have some exercise in mind. It has to do with hand review. We'd have to just look at some tournament you played.
We can do that.
Another thing is what do you like doing or what you need or what sort of exercise. That's something you should or can let me know as well. It's not only I know best what you need. Sometimes you might have some good ideas for that also.
It's good if we vary a bit from one to the next, not always focus exactly on the same subject. You already do that. That's awesome. Norman, I keep drinking and I drink a lot, like more than 2 liters a day. Have to go to the bathroom. Can we make a small break? Maybe you have something to do too. We come back in a couple of minutes, 2, 3 minutes,
I
5
think
minutes.
Good.
You want me to pick the last tournament?
Perfect. Doesn't have to be the last one. It's usually a good idea to take a recent one. This seems quite late stage in a tournament. Is it the last hand?
Let's see.
Let's look at it then. I will explain as we go along what the idea I have. I know it would be nice if I would give some introduction of we're gonna practice this thing. I don't have a good introduction for now. Let's go with the hands. Practice. There's a few things for us to practice. One is I want to check if from last time, how good you are with noticing straights. I want you to become most excellent at it. Then the other thing we worked on last time, distinguishing between different outs. We talked about good outs and bad outs, sort of like poisoned apples and healthy and good apples, or grapes that have gone sour, or sweet grapes. Same with the outs, to be more vigilant about the outs. Really, for this lesson, the idea I had in mind was overall to think about where you are in your range with your hand. That sounds quite mystical and magical. Essentially, what it is let's start from pre-flop. If you get a hand like King 8 offsuit, and let's say it's in your opening range, would that be one of the weaker or stronger or average hands in your opening range?
It would be quite weak.
It would be quite weak. Excellent. Then let's say the flop comes. Let's say flop is an ace, a 10, and a 9. You just have King 8 there. On a board of ace, 10, 9, you could have an ace, you could have a 10, you could have a 9. But having King 8, you would have none of those. So again, your hand would be quite weak there. That's a short introduction to it. The point of that is really to recognize when you have one of the best hands you can have at the scenario, one of the average hands, or one of the weaker hands, to put it in some perspective. Where it can be very helpful is sometimes we get disillusioned with our hand. I'll give you an example. Let's say you have a 3 of a kind. Usually, if you have a 3 of a kind, would you consider that a strong or a weak hand?
A strong hand.
Strong hand. Now imagine that the board would have 3 spades on it. Even though you have 3 of a kind, you wouldn't have any spade. In that context, would your hand now be as strong as usual, your 3 of a kind?
Could be quite dangerous.
Right? And its absolute value, would it be one of your best hands still, or would it just be one of your average hands? Where would you place your 3 of a kind?
There could be a better hand.
Could be better. You would still place it amongst the better hands. It would still be one of the stronger hands. Now imagine the turn card brings a 4th spade. Where would you place your 3 of a kind then? 4 spades on the board. Where would the 3 of a kind be placed? With no spade.
What you ask me is, does its value changes over time? I'm not sure it does. It is just that it is not the strongest hand. If the other guy starts betting, well, he might have that spade, make his flush. Then I'm beat. It might not be strong enough for victory, but its absolute strength should be the same.
There is no absolute strength in many ways. Or even if it is, it doesn't matter too much.
For victory, my chances of winning drop with the 4th spade a lot.
Would they now be bad, good, or average, those chances?
If my chance of winning drop a lot, then you can argue that I have less power. Yes, the hand is less strong, my three of a kind.
Let's leave it here. I went too far with my introduction. It's not helpful. Let's really get to these scenarios and then discuss it. That will be more helpful. And you will recognize what the idea is behind the exercise. Let's just skip the 8-2 and 6-3 and ace queen. Here's a hand we will play. Player 3 with a huge stack. The first two hands he won all in, it seems like. I'm expecting a big raise from you. All good. Let's think about this for a moment. In terms of all the hands you would do this with, where would you place ace queen? To make it more concrete, let's grade it from 1 to 5. 5 would be aces, and 1 would be the absolute weakest hand you would do this with. We're going to be a little subjective. Your ace queen, where would you place it?
Do I have to say round numbers, or can I put something behind the
You
number?
can if you want. It's fine. It doesn't have to be so accurate. Anything.
If it doesn't have to be too accurate, I would put it 4.
4. I guess here where I would say is it's a bit closer to 3 than 5. Why do I say that? Because 3 would be the middle. 3 would be an average hand. But you know, the average hand you make 5 big blinds is quite strong. Does that make sense? I don't think you would do this with every ace or every pair this raise. Right? So certainly ace queen's above average, but it's actually not so much ahead of the average.
Now, the average would be 2.5. And you say that the average is 3. So that's a little strange to me.
The average, if it's 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1, it's a bit different than math. With math, 2.5, it's there. If you have a 0 there, that's where it would be average. Here there would be just like 5 fingers. Then the average is the third finger. It would be in the middle. It's not like a magical average.
You're correct, Norman. I agree with that. Thank you. You think this is more average than 4?
Well, 4's a good one. It's between 3 and 4.
Is it closer to 3 or closer to 4?
Fair to say closer to 4. It's definitely closer to 3 than 5. What this is important is because a lot of the time, problems start when people either overestimate or underestimate their hand. Ace queen, as pretty as it is, you have many opponents. They could have good hands. If you make a raise of 5 big blinds, then you do it with very select hands. Ace queen suited is still a little above average there, but you could have had ace king and done this. You could have had pocket jacks and done this, or pocket aces. You could have had ace 10. All it is for this now is to put it into some perspective, which helps with the anticipation. It helps with the anticipation. If we don't place ace queen too high or too low, we put it in realistic terms. Let's see if they both call or not here. They do. Now, what would you estimate your winning percentage? That's a completely different question. Try to separate what I'm asking for this one. This is out of 100% or 100 times. How many times would you win against their hands here? It's like a poker percent question.
Maybe 35%.
35. Now, if every 3 player win equally, what would the win percent be?
33.
Now, which position usually wins the most hands? If you leave out cards, let's forget about cards.
But maybe we can put it up then to 40%.
40%. That would leave for the other 2 players how much? 30%. Now, if they have 30%, what I'm hearing is they have pretty good hands.
Yes. Look, maybe I should give player 3 more than player 6. I could give him 32, the other one just 29, to make it more precise.
That's fine. That doesn't change your own percent. It changes how you distribute their winning chances. That's fine. Overall, it's a bit low here, actually. I like that you're on the conservative side. Definitely, it's not going to be like 70 or 80.
How much would you give it?
At least 45, absolute minimum. At most 60. In my mind, somewhere between 45 to 60.
Then you assume that they are very loose.
Indeed, I do that based on the fact that they limped into the pot. I expect them to play a lot of hands, often hands that are dominated. What is a dominated hand? Could you give me an example of that?
Ace, jack suited.
Yeah, a hand like queen 10, right? Let's carry on. All right, now great. Now on this board, that's an excellent hand. We can thank the universe for providing this excellent talking a little bit about magic or belief or religion. I have had some magical moments in my life, or supernatural, you could say. I don't really talk about them too much. They give some belief if you experience something your own self. With poker lessons, I've had this experience so many times. I'm trying to teach something and I'm playing with the student or I'm reviewing hands. And then suddenly just this hand comes up, which is exactly the hand I would need for my lesson, this sort of thing. You could say it's coincidence. I'm just thinking in a weird way. I don't know either way. It gives me joy and happiness if it's like some magical order to the universe of things going exactly like seems appropriate. Obviously not always. Sometimes could be other ways also.
You have to know if you just give too much weight to it when it happens. What I want to add is that matter reacts differently when you look at it than when you don't look at it. There have been some research that show that particles behave differently when you look at them and don't. Maybe when you look at something and you're interested in something, that makes it appear.
There you go. We don't know exactly how the universe works.
Like the law of gravity, it might just be something we haven't discovered for now.
Exactly. And it might be that it's related to the attention and interest.
A lot of people don't understand it. That stuff that should behave exactly the same, that you're present or not, changes when you're present and when you're looking, is really strange. It's like when a branch falls off a tree and makes a sound in the forest. Does that sound really exist if nobody listened to that sound? Maybe it does not. Maybe you have to be present to make it appear. I'm just making something up. I find that interesting to philosoph about it. Let's keep going. You want to talk about the risk of the straight here?
Well, not exactly. Overall, what I want to comment is the whole universe or the whole existence is strange. Using the word you just used, strange. I wouldn't be surprised if there's many secrets and hidden things about it that we don't realize yet. And it's even more strange than we could ever imagine. But even as it is, even as we understand the world as it is now, it's all super strange that it all exists in the first place, that we're alive, that everything is as it is. It's all red strange as it is, even without all the extra stuff we're talking about.
Agree.
On this board, we want to place now the same way ace queen, like we did previously, of the hands you could have. This board now changes the order of your hands. Pre-flop, what was your best hand?
A flush, an ace. My best hand was an ace, pre-flop.
What was your two best cards pre-flop? You can choose any two cards pre-flop. What would you have chosen in that scenario?
A king and a jack. What do you mean? I don't understand. What's the question? I have my cards.
Best hand you can have pre-flop. Which cards would you choose?
I cannot change my pre-flop strength. It only varies on the flop. Why do you ask about the pre-flop? If I can choose, I would choose ace. Then I would choose king.
No, you should choose king second, not ace.
King second. Then sometimes I will choose ace queen.
Right. Now on this board, would you still choose aces first?
No, I would not choose aces first.
What would you choose first on this board?
I would choose 10 and a king.
Take a moment, all good.
But 10 and a king.
Bad choice, try again. Let's go with our last lesson.
Okay.
Is there a cards in order? Is there a gap in the card? Is there a one gap or two gap for cards in a row?
One gap, and it would be a 10.
When we want to do straights with one gap, we take the card in between. Then what's the other card we pick?
10 and a queen in that case. I should pick a queen.
Remember last time we picked the gap and then we picked either one higher or one lower.
That's why I go for the queen. If I get the 7, it would be less good, and it's not the stronger.
It still would be strong.
If the other one has the queen, he makes
it. Certainly. What would be the hand you would pick on this board?
I would pick 10 and a queen.
Now think back to pre-flop. Would you have done this big race as you did with queen and a 10?
No, I would not.
So we cannot pick this. So what's the next best hand on this board? You already said it, by the way. It's the lower straight.
Yeah, then a 7 and a 10.
Okay. Would you have done this move you did pre-flop with that hand?
I would not.
Now, what's the third best hand on this board? As a hint, there's no more straights possible. It has to be something else.
The third best hand would be pocket jacks.
Very good. For you, the hands you could actually have, it would be your best hand. Your best hand would be jacks on this.
I agree.
Great. The order of pre-flop shifted around a bit. Pre-flop, there was aces best, king second. Now it's jacks best. Doesn't mean aces is bad. Now it's best. What's second best?
9, pocket 9.
Would you have done the move you did pre-flop with 9?
Yeah.
Okay, great. It's actually the second best we could have. What's the third best?
Pocket 8s.
Would you have done the move you did pre-flop with that hand?
I think so.
Already a little doubt, you think so? I guess we would have it as our third best hand. Any more three of a kinds possible?
No.
What's next? What's weaker than three of a kind? I'm not asking specific answer. In general, what is weaker than three of a kind?
1 pair.
What is
A pocket pair.
What's next in order? Do the order of hand strength. There is something weaker than three of a kind, stronger than 1 pair. There's something there.
2 pair.
Exactly. So now we should look into 2 pair. Out of the 2 pairs possible on this board, would you have raised any of them?
I do not think so.
So we won't have 2 pair on this board. Now we have to go, what's one hand category weaker than 2 pair?
1 pair.
All right, great. What's our best 1 pair hand?
Aces.
It's aces. Overall, it's our 4th best hand now. It was first best. It's now 4th best. What's our 5th strongest hand?
Kings.
Very good. 6th best hand.
Queens.
7th best hand.
Tens.
This is a tricky one. Take a moment. That's incorrect. Take a moment. We can have something weaker than queens, stronger than tens for it to be 1 pair. I'll give you a hint. It's a hand you said for pre-flop when I asked you a hand ace-queen dominates. You said that hand as an answer of a hand ace-queen dominates.
I said ace jack.
Would that be an acceptable answer? Would it make logical sense for that to be next in order in terms of hand strength after queens?
Yes, it's stronger than tens. It's the better answer.
There you go. That's the strange thing. It's a strange thing how pre-flop, ace-jack doesn't come next after queens. On this board, it was your 6th best hand, if I remember the counting, right? The jacks, nines, eights, top 3, aces 4th, kings 5th, queen 6th, your 7th best hand. Did mess up the order there by 1. 7th strongest, ace-jack. What's your 8th strongest? Take a moment. That's maybe tricky.
It's king jack.
Perfect. I'm very happy with that answer. Good you figured that out. Would you have king jack the way you played pre-flop?
I don't think so.
Maybe for us, maybe king jack suited, maybe not.
Suited, maybe I would have raised it, but I was thinking about offsuit. I don't think I would have raised it offsuit.
All right.
Would you have raised it off king jack off?
I'm not sure really. It seems very loose and aggressive. It's not very prudent how I usually think in that. It just seems very unnecessary.
And would you make an exception for king jack suited or would you not?
Yeah, I think that would be excellent.
You would have gone for 5 big blinds with king jack suited against 2 limpers. We had only 2, or did you have 3 limpers?
There was 2 there.
Go ahead.
Just continuing with the order a bit. Maybe king jack suited. What would be the next strongest hand we would have?
Queen jack suited.
Would we do this play pre-flop with that?
I don't think so.
Then for us it would be something different. What would next strongest hand for us be?
It would be ace 9 suited.
That's a pretty good answer. I like that you recognize there's no more jacks. Do you now miss the hand you said before?
Yes, I forgot my tens.
Exactly. There would be the tens, then would be ace-9 suited. Now here's where things get interesting. What would be after ace-9 suited? Because all I'm seeing is there would be a lot of hands you would not play. You wouldn't play king-9, you wouldn't play any of the other 1 pair 9s this way. Would you have an 8 ever this way? I don't think you would raise an 8 so big.
There will be no king 9 suited and there will also be no ace 8 suited.
What would come next that you would have?
I don't think there's anything.
Well, there still is, because we haven't gotten to the hand you actually hold here. There might not be anything for a pair anymore. What's one hand class weaker than a pair?
A suited hand and with an ace. Picture card, just as we have two picture cards.
There's a classification name.
Okay,
The
what's the name?
classification name is high card.
High card.
What's the best out of high card you could have based on preflop?
Ace king suited.
Let's keep the suited or off suited. It's not too relevant for this discussion. It's good, it's true. I would rather have ace king suited. On this board, it's not super important as there isn't a flush draw on it. Your ace king would be our next best thing. Now, from ace 9, we have to go to ace king. What would you have after ace king?
My hand.
Finally, in the order, we got to your hand. Now, what would come after your ace queen in the order?
Maybe I would still do it with ace 10.
Now, if you look at this board, what would ace 10 have going for it?
It would be missing one card to make a flush. Not
No,
a flush, a straight.
How many cards in a row would it have?
It would have 4 cards in a row.
Your hand is also a straight draw. What card is it missing?
It's missing a 10.
Which has more chances to make a straight? Your hand or ace 10?
I will answer correctly if I say if a queen is better to have than ace 10. That will be the answer. If that is correct, do I like more ace queen? I should like more ace queen because they are higher cards. If I have ace 10, then it's less likely they make a 10. That would help me also. I don't know.
It's something different here.
Can you ask the question again?
If you have ace 10, what would you realistically need to win the hand? What card would you need to hit?
A queen.
What outs would you have?
Ace 10. I would
Is
have.
that all? I need all the outs. All the outs.
I could win with an ace.
Anything else? You're missing the part of 4 cards in a row and what we talked about last time. We talked last time about going one higher and one lower.
I get it. If I have ace queen, I can only go high. If I have ace 10, I can also go lower. If I go lower, then that gives me more chances of winning.
You said ace queen, you can only go higher by that.
I can only make a straight from 8, 9, 10, jack, queen. If I have a 10, I can make that straight. I could also make a straight with a 7.
More accurate would be with ace queen, you have to go into the middle. You have to go to the middle of the gap, which is the 10. If you already have filled the gap, then you can go either way. You can go left or right.
I have 9 outs more with a 10.
Not 9 outs more. That sounds a lot. Where did you get that number?
How many outs do I have?
4 outs.
4, you're correct. Because there are only 4 tens left.
Oh, no.
It is with a flash that I have 9 outs.
Exactly. Sometimes it's not good to remember things because it's better to understand than to remember. With ace queen here, what are our outs?
With ace queen, what are our outs? I have 4 outs for the 10. I have 3 outs for the ace. I have 3 outs for the queen. If I'm not mistaken, that's all.
What is the issue with the outs to a queen? I want to say the queen outs seem a little bit poisoned. Why do I think that way?
Because if I make the queen, it could help the other guy make his straight.
They would only need 1 card for a straight. Then what would be the card that would make them a straight?
It would be the 10.
It would be the 10. Even an ace, it's a dangerous board just for the ace. Really, the best out for you here is the 10.
No, man. Now, what's the question?
The whole point of this is, you remember now the jacks is the best hand on this board, not aces.
Yeah.
The whole point of this is, to me, it's not clear that ace queen is better than ace 10.
Ace queen is better than ace 10. You don't know which one.
It's not clear that it's the case. I could say I'd rather have even ace 10 than ace queen.
I think ace 10 is better here.
Okay, so when we went with our order, what should we put next after ace king then?
Probably ace 10.
Then maybe after ace 10 we could put ace queen. Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes sense. Thank you.
Then what would we put after ace queen? What would be next? It has to be something we would play pre-flop this way and make this big raise.
I don't think there's anything.
Could there be king queen suited? I think there could be.
It could be.
Maybe there's one more hand, but pretty much there would be nothing. Now, why is the point of this? If you remember pre-flop, we gave ace queen a 4 out of 5. 4 out of 5 in the order. I said it was maybe a little closer to 3 than the 5. In my mind, it was something like 3.6 out of 5. Or like 7 out of a 10 hand. Now we find nothing weaker than ace queen on this board that you would have played. We can have jacks, we can have aces, we can have pocket nines, we can have ace jack even. or ace-10 or all these hands. What should we give now our ace-queen in terms of our order from 1 to 5? Or maybe 1 to 5 is bad. Let's give it a letter then. From A to E, A, B, C, D, E. First 5 letters. Could do this way also. C being the middle one.
Pre-flop, it was 3.6. Now you want me to tell you how much it is worth on the flop. Is that the question?
Yes, exactly. Jacks would be 5. Jacks would be your best here. Nines would be second best. What would ace-queen be?
2.
How many hands were there weaker than ace-queen that you could have this situation?
Not too many.
Well, what were those hands? We just went through the ordering of the list. What were those?
Well, there was a king, jack suited.
What's the problem with that? What's king, jack suited on this board?
Oh, it's already a winning hand. Not king, jack suited. King, queen suited.
Okay, that is one hand, yes. That is one hand weaker. But I think that was all we found. Is there anything weaker than ace-queen here, other than king-queen?
The answer is no. In that case, you want me to say that ace-queen is now the weakest hand? It is 1?
It's not the weakest. Weakest is king-queen. We should give it 1. I don't really want to get too caught up in the details, but king-queen is not so much worse than ace-queen here. What I like about king-queen is, let's say a 10 comes. Who wins on a 10, ace-queen or king-queen?
King-queen wins.
What would be the special reason for that?
Because it makes a higher straight.
What's the key card that makes it for king-queen?
A 10.
Well, the same 10 helps ace-queen, but what's the card that makes the difference in the higher straight?
It's a king instead of the queen.
No, they both need the queen still. If a 10 comes, they both need to use the queen. What's the difference card?
We are talking about king, queen suited now. Am I correct?
Yes, we're talking about the scenario where a 10 comes and which hand would win.
Higher straight with the king would win.
What would be the one key card that would make it win over ace-queen?
King.
It would be the king. Good, that's the answer I was looking for. Maybe sometimes I don't ask it the best way. I was just looking that the king would add an extra card there in the straight. It wouldn't be from 8 to a queen. From 8 to a queen, it would be then from 9 to a king. That king, queen being close together would help. We could even make a case that maybe even just like ace-10 seems better than ace-queen. Maybe even king-queen's better than ace-queen.
Probably it is.
Now, all that being said, what number should we give then from 1 to 5 our ace-queen?
1.
We should give it 1, exactly. Why this is so important, this exercise, is a lot about poker, is about recalibrating and adjusting. That's why I said it's almost magical we got this hand, because some things shifted. Jacks went to first place. Jacks was still very strong hand pre-flop. It just got a little better. And ace now to fourth place on this board. But it also was pretty good pre-flop. But ace-queen, we gave a pretty good, great pre-flop. I mean, ace-queen was pre-flop better than ace-jack. It was better than ace-10. It was better than king-queen. It was better than king-jack. It was almost same good as jacks, 10s, 9s, 8s. Now on this flop, it all changes. Now ace-queen is really at the bottom of the list. This type of changing of the order is something that good players are extremely good at, of readjusting, not being attached to something. If someone realizes that the order changes, then they're not attached to their hand. I'll tell you a little story on this. Very common. I hear from very new players who I teach that they lose in this way where they have a hand like kings or queens, then an ace comes on the board. Now, kings or queens pre-flop is which hand strength in order?
It's hand 2 or 3.
Exactly. If the board has an ace on it, suddenly it's all different. There could be so many hands in front of it. There could be ace king, ace queen, ace jack, even ace 2 would be better than kings or queen. The issue newer players have in poker is they are still stuck with the thinking that kings or queens are second or third best. They still would lose a big pot. They're not sensitive to the ace on the board. I'm thinking of one hand where the other player had queens. Queens pre-flop is third best hand. The board had both ace and a king on it. This player still lost a huge pot with queens. It's like they were completely oblivious to the fact that now there's 2 higher cards on the board. Now, I'm not saying you make these mistakes. If you do, Hey, we're all human, we all do that. On this board, it's just nice to see how ace queen completely plummets in value. It still looks okay. The good news is you have very good hands, you make 5 big blinds. Even your weak hand of 1 is still a hand that has some outs, is still a hand that's a pretty nice hand. If we think of all your hands, it's the worst you would have in this scenario. If we replay this scenario hundreds of times, where you raise 5 big blinds, this is the worst hand you could come to the flop with.
Very interesting, Norman. Can I say that I have a lot of outs? They are poisoned because they can be easily beaten by player 3 and player 6. Is that correct?
I would actually word it differently. I'll answer it again.
Please, yes, do.
In my mind, I only think of outs as things that make a difference. In my mind, I don't even consider the cards as outs that we can hit. I wouldn't have confidence of making it.
One more interruption. Please tell me, in your mind, you only consider some outs, then it cuts off. Please try to explain that to me.
Maybe it's wrong. It's just in my mind, it's not even an out if it's poison. It's like in my mind, if I see some poison juice, I think of that as wine. I don't think of it as juice anymore. Does that make some sense?
It makes sense, Norman. You only look at outs if you can win with them. If you cannot win with them, then you don't look at them. For me, it's a little different because I use an odds calculator. It gives me some outs. I will still see on the odds calculator a lot of outs. I have to look on the board and realize that the value of my hand has dropped to 1, that it's now very dangerous because if I keep playing, well, I could be easily beaten. I must be careful. Even though on paper, for me, there's a lot of out showing up, I still have to be careful in calling because it's not the strongest trade. I might lose. Do you have anything to add to this, Norman?
It's been a long meeting. I feel like mentally quite tired. It's not always easy to teach these things. We had progress with that. It's not an easy subject to order these hands, and it's not immediately clear why it can be helpful. The point of this is, I already explained what the point is. I tried at least. It's to recognize that ace queen is one of the weakest hands you have at that scenario. We shouldn't be too attached to it. That's one thing. Like sometimes people would not want to fold that scenario. They feel like they're obligated to continue with their hand. If you really think about all the nice things you have there, if you raise 5 big blinds, you will have aces, you will have ace jack, you will have pocket jacks, you will have king jack, you will have so much nice, beautiful hands there. When you have ace queen, it shouldn't be taken as too big of a thing to let that go, to be cautious with. If anything, your hand could be used as a bluff. It could be a hand where I would say in a very strong player game, someone could recognize I have so many good hands here. I'm gonna now use ace queen as a bluffing hand. I'll play it like if I had pocket jacks. I'll play it like if I had aces. Now, why I don't give advice like this to you there is, I don't think your opponents would care if you pretend to have aces or if you pretend to have jacks. I don't think they're prudent enough to make that big fold. We didn't talk about their order of hands. They could actually have a straight there with their ranges. Do you agree they could have queen 10 there already?
I do.
They could have these hands. They could have an 8, a 9. They could have a lot of stuff there. This relative switch, realizing that we're at the bottom of our range. If you remember way back, I recommended you this 4 category system course you did on Upswing. It had this 4 categories. The basic logic of it is, if we're at the bottom of our range, often we want to fold. If we're at the top of our range, often we want to bet. If we're somewhere in the middle, that's those hands that we sometimes bluff, sometimes we want to defend and call with. It's just this ordering can help with that, also to figure out what you should do. Often the answer is if your hand is the weakest you can have, like ace queen would be there. By the way, ace king wouldn't be too far behind. Even a hand ace king, such a top hand pre-flop, on that board it's maybe not 1 out of 5, it would be 2 out of 5. It would certainly be way below average. This recognition helps to realize which hands we have to fold as well. Now you suddenly seem to be in a very good mood.
I'm happy. We had a great lesson. I really enjoyed talking about that subject with you. I feel like we did something meaningful today. I like when things go well and I use my time wisely. I'm fortunate enough to see you once a week. I really enjoy that. It's awesome. Norman, you did a great job. Thanks a lot for all that. And it's unbelievable how you can see on my face a subtle shift of mood. Actually, I don't like that, because if I sit on a poker table and people can read me like that, it will go very bad for me.
You can do the same thing. It's part of honest communication to not hold back your expressions in that way.
I don't think that I show much my emotions. Last time, one of my neighbors, she stopped me in the streets. She asked me how I'm doing. I said, I'm all right, thanks, like usual. The normal answer you give. She said, doesn't look like that. Actually, I had a lot of things that annoyed me that day, and I didn't feel that well. I don't like if people in the streets can see if I'm happy, sad, angry. I don't want to be an open book you can read. With you, it's different. You're a friend. If everybody can very easily see in what state of mind I'm in, I'm not sure that that is awesome. Probably not everybody can. Just people who play attention, are sensitive, like an empath, since we talked about that at the beginning of our lesson. How about we call it a day? I see you next week, Norman. Or would you like to add anything?
I'm just thinking the people on the street, I think the reason is that they're strangers, really. That's something that's unnatural about. Like, imagine you live in a forest like an animal. You would know all the animals living around you. You would, if you're among tribes, all the people from your tribe. What's strange about our society is we walk in the street, we have no idea who these people are. It's very irritating, really. I don't think it's very natural.
Yeah.
I don't like that at all. I'm more like something like a village even, or something like that, where everyone knows everybody. I feel like it's way more safe in that way. I don't like this feeling where I could walk past a murderer, I could walk past living in the city. Causes this a bit, that people try to be so defensive in a way. We're always like in war in some sense. It's always have to be careful not someone steal your bag or pickpocket you, or then someone tries to come up to you, sell you some crap or something. It's very stressful. I much rather prefer at least knowing the people they are. Even if I don't know people personally, I really feel much better if I see a familiar face. I don't know about if I go to the store or somewhere, I know the people who work there, or I see some person who goes to that store. Even if I don't know them, it feels safer knowing that I've been around that person for a long time. To me, it's like a big city, like a capital or New York City. Most people live in places like that. I don't know. It's exciting in a way because it's so many new interesting people you could meet. Usually everyone's just reserved anyway. It doesn't matter. You could meet those people if really no one's meeting because they're all cold, because it's uncomfortable, all these people. It's just wanted to say it makes me sad.
Norman, the more time we spend together, the more we realize that we have a lot of in common. We look the same way on a lot of things. We share a lot of opinions. Sometimes we diverge also, but for a lot we agree and we have the same feeling and the same look on life. The more you talk, the more I realize that. The thing I want to add is that we are wired to live in small groups of around 30 people, not more. The issue is everywhere we go, in school and everywhere else, there are way more people than that. If you exceed that number, it is very hard to have any intimacy or to get to know those people. They're just too much. Our brain cannot handle it. It's very hard for us to go above 30 people. Every stranger we meet, we have to be worried because we never know their intention. We don't know anything about them. They could be somebody from another tribe who want to raid us, get our woman, burn our village down, do horrible stuff. We just cannot know. It's like monkeys in the forest. They live in small groups. I don't think more than 30. Sometimes there are raids. Sometimes another group comes in, wants to take your territory because they have limited access to territory. When they go out their territory, they want to go to the next one. Sometimes they kill neighboring tribes. It's the same with us. When we see a foreigner or somebody we see for the first time, in our brain something lights up. We get defensive. I don't want to say scared. It creates anxiety in us. Norman, do we call it a day? You did so much today. Thanks a lot. It was an awesome lesson. I really enjoyed it.
Hey, thank you for, I see your effort. It's not easy to learn these things.
The more I do it, the more I enjoy it. Don't worry.
That's nice. Then for this week, if you play, try to practice it a little bit when playing. I know there's a lot to think about. Try to practice, think about it a little, the straight things, to notice the straighty cards, and think about this relative hand strength. That's very new. That may be tough to practice for now. Then lastly, I have to say I did notice some blood on top of your head or something.
Oh, I shave my head. Sometimes I cut myself when I do that. But don't worry about it.
I'm pretty sure I'm going to be one of those strange guys that if I'm starting to go bald, which might happen, I'm gonna be like this long hair bald guy.
Maybe. The Japanese had a very strange way of cutting the hair. They shaved some part of it, if you look to the samurai, and kept some hair. What is beautiful, what we like or we don't like, fashion. You get used to it. The beauty standard actually depends on what the environment teaches you. You have an ideal on how you want to look. It's a form of ego trip. It's not important. The Buddhist, he interacted with a lot of people. There were some girls that were very beautiful. Everybody admired them. They didn't like how they look. It's a very subjective matter. It's an ego trip.
To me, my belief is I trust my ancestors for the way I look. In my mindset, it's like honoring the genes I have. If my genes say that I should look like this, I don't say if this is like good. I don't put judgment on that. Some people are with red hair, then they say, I want to be blonde instead. Or they would be like, I want more hair or less hair. My philosophy or thinking is I want to be as authentic as I am in this way. That's my belief in that, which maybe is not important. I get it's just external thing. It's evolutionary just to protect from, I don't know what the winds. I'm not sure why animals exactly have fur and stuff like that. It's not so important. I can't say I'm comfortable or confident in the way I am. I still have doubts about my own beauty, all these things. It's like a statement that even if I have insecurities, I try to be open still about who I am, if that makes some sense.
I like that you talked about the ancestors because we should follow their fashion more than our fashion that changes all the time. What I want to add is simply that try not to do that. Remember that it has very low impact. It's like on a scale of 1 to 10. I would say that your inner peace is 7 or 8. Your clothes is only 1 or 2 points. It's very little, maybe 2 points, and the rest is 8 points. Concentrate much more on your inner peace. That will make you happy. Don't focus much on external stuff. We teach that all the time. It's important to remember.
Focus on substance, not appearances. Focus on the real. I like that.
Exactly, Norman. Thanks a lot. See you next week. Take care. Bye-bye.